in Middle Eastern Studies to discuss the recognition of the Egyptian revolution, let's say. Is that quite what it is, the recognition of the Egyptian revolution, what we're witnessing the last few days in the country?
In a sense, yes, it is. 2 years ago, after Mubarak was ousted, Muslim Brotherhood came to power. It was the most organized, with the most extensive network in the country. And people trusted the Muslim Brotherhood to run the country. But after November of last year, 2012, when the president assumed rights and basically imposed his own constitution that was not to the liking of many Egyptians, then people started expressing doubts. And this movement gradually grew in strength and became bigger, and it's come to what now we have in Egypt. People in Egypt do not, even though they are religious, they do not wish to have one particular interpretation of religion imposed on them. And they want the freedom, as was the motto of the revolution, freedom, bread, justice, and so on. And they don't feel that Morsi has delivered on those promises.
But Morsi had won the presidential election with a great difference, so they did put a lot of hope into his hands and into his figure, let's say.
Well, you say great difference. If you take into account the huge number of Egyptian people, it wasn't such a great difference. I think his rival lost, if I'm not mistaken, by about 1 million votes. Yes, he got definitely 50+%, but I don't think it was an overwhelming majority. But Egyptians have shown now, I mean, today in Egypt, in the streets, you get veiled women, you get religious people, you get secular people who are showing disaffection and disillusionment with Morsi's government. Muslim Brotherhood has proven incapable of fulfilling the dreams and the aspirations of the Egyptian people.
Was it a foreseeable recognition of the revolutions? I mean, we had the signs with the constitution change and the voices that were getting louder and louder against Morsi's government and his ways. So could someone have foreseen what is happening now?
To be honest, a plain answer to that would be no. I don't think Morsi or the Muslim Brotherhood foresaw this kind of reaction. I don't think many observers, after all, but either could see that, after all, wherever we've had political Islam coming to power, they've been able to sway the majority of the people's opinion and take them to their own side and carry them with them. But this, in Egypt, they have failed quite spectacularly. And I don't think this was foreseen by anyone. It was, in a way, therefore, surprising for many to see this.
In the past, well, to be specific, 2 years ago, Egypt was an example for other Middle Eastern countries. Could what's happening now in Egypt be again an example for other countries to follow?
Undoubtedly, it will have repercussions. This will be, perhaps, if Morsi falls, and of course we have to wait and see, we shouldn't jump the gun. If Morsi falls and we get, and this is of course still a big if, we have to wait and see. But if a liberal secular government succeeds Morsi, this will undoubtedly be the greatest defeat for political Islam in recent history. And this will have repercussions for other countries that have aspirations in this respect, or other countries who are already governed by Islamist rule.
Would you say that other countries are closely following what's happening in Egypt, trying to get ready for what might come to them?
Yes, yes. I'm sure in what's happening in Syria right now, it will be impressed by developments in Egypt. I think no doubt Tunisia, no doubt Libya will also be affected. If you go further to the east, other countries, Iraq, Iran, will themselves be influenced by developments in Greece. It's more, of course, a psychological impact that it will have, that people on their own, against the expectations and against the odds, have been able to actually turn the situation to their own liking. Particularly in Egypt, when at least some people in Egypt believe that some of the bigger powers were more in favor of Morsi's government than any alternative, still people have managed to bring the situation to a point when everyone now expects Morsi, maybe within hours, or perhaps slightly longer, to resign and a new government to take over.
It is true that in the afternoon today we had the first statement from the US officials asking him to resign or to take action pro-people-wise in Egypt.
That's right. I think I just heard that the American Congress has asked Morsi to resign. Therefore, this is huge pressure. We've had at least 6 of his ministers resigning. We've had 2 of his spokesmen resigning. We've had 1 spokesman of the Prime Minister resigning. We've had Al-Sisi, the defense minister, issuing that ultimatum 48 hours ago. And right now, as we are conducting this talk, there may well be a new statement by the ministry in continuation of what they said 48 hours ago. So it's a developing situation. And I think international sympathy is now increasingly with the people and those who are opposing Morsi. Morsi, I think, shot himself in the foot last year when he very, I think, dogmatically and stubbornly stuck to his gun that he had to have these extra powers, special powers that everybody disagreed with. I think that really seems now to have been the turning point.
He tried to show that he was strong and that he could have taken like really serious decisions, but that was actually what turned everyone against him. And now I have a twofold question. You spoke earlier about the defense forces, and we've seen reports, notably in Reuters, that his former quite close ally and close friend, the chief of defense forces, has turned on Morsi. And then again, you spoke of Syria and how in Egypt we have a strong pressure from the international community, notably the US, which is also happening for Syria, but then we don't have any developments to that direction that the international community would have wanted. So my question is, could these 2 developments or these 2 facts be drawing the future? We have the defense forces rising up against the government, and then we have an international community that might be quite strong, but only in words. Could we see defense forces taking up or filling in that gap between the 2?
In Egypt, the army is almost unique in the, I think, in the entire Arab world, if not wider Muslim world, in that is a national army, is a nationalist army. People look up to the army. This wasn't the case at all in other countries. It's not the case in Syria or in Iraq or in Libya. Army has that public goodwill with itself, and therefore its intervention in political affairs, whenever it does, will not be looked down with disdain and disgust. The army may well be able to, as you put it, fill in that gap. But this may not necessarily be so in other countries. In Syria, there isn't a nationalist army as such, because unlike Egypt, Syria is sectarian, and the army, at least the key figures in army, are made up of those people who surround or who are with government. In Egypt, we don't have this. Egypt is a true sort of centrally organized, commanded army. But in other countries where there's sectarianism, like Syria, or there was tribalism in Libya, or before that we had the army in Iraq, these armies do not have that kind of image, that kind of public goodwill that the Egyptian army enjoys. That's a unique position, I would say, for Egyptian army in the Arab world, in the Middle East.
Focusing back in Egypt, do you think that Morsi will try and fight to keep his position?
Oh yes, he has. I think he has fought more than many others would have. If it continues this way, if there isn't anything unexpected, either openly or behind closed doors, we don't know, I expect him to resign and to leave. The important thing here is that Egyptian people also have very recognized, internationally recognized and respected opposition leaders like al-Baradi, like Amr Musa. These are international figures who have the support and respect of the people and the international community. And they have shown to be very steadfast and very consistent in their demands and in what they are asking, in what they are demanding. I do not foresee Morsi being able to actually keep the presidency much longer unless something out of the ordinary happens.
Do you think that the armed forces would have to intervene?
I would say yes. I don't think Morsi, at least there is no record of political Islamists giving up power voluntarily and easily. They must be forced out of power. I would think if we are going to see this change, it will be through the intervention of the armed forces in Egypt.
A long one?
Well, it will not be a short one, I think. It will not be a quick one. It will have to be, I guess, new elections, possibly a new constitution. And I think then we'll have Muslim Brotherhood going and sort of reviewing the situation, where they went wrong and how can regroup themselves and come back after this huge defeat. So it will be, I would guess, something in the region of a year or so.
Can the social web or the social community in Egypt handle something like that? We had 2 years ago, they were all fighting against something, they failed, they are called to fight again for something else, but this time we have, let's say, not a civil war, but we have two opposing sides that are quite strong, both of them. If this fails or if one of them prevails, not so greatly, and then we go to another round of a failed attempt for a prosperous future for Egypt. Can the Egyptian people, the Egyptian society handle that?
It's a difficult question and not easy to answer. There is a possibility that, of course, chaos and turmoil may follow what's happening now in Egypt. But because Egyptian people have shown to be united and well guided, I would say, by their political leaders, the figures we just mentioned, and the armed forces are also able to intervene, enjoy public support, they are centrally organized and commanded. I think there is less chance of that in Egypt than in any other neighboring countries. So if I had to hedge my bets, I would say no. I think the Egyptians should be able to actually go through this and come out triumphantly.
My question was more about the destabilization of the peoples around the region, because we have the ongoing fight in Syria. Things have yet to be quite stabilized elsewhere. Now we have Turkey rising with new turmoil. Egypt has been the lighthouse of the region for quite a few years.
Yes.
Well, a potential fall or collapse of that social community, the web of that country, would have been an example of what's going to follow in other countries that might be not as strong.
I'm not sure that will happen. Yes, in Turkey, Turkey is a very good comparison, because again we had an Islamist prime minister who tried to go further than what people wanted in imposing Islamic rule, And people have now shown, have dissented, have shown dislike for that. And they have expressed that. And government has had to take heed of that and take note of that. Egypt, the same has taken place, but in a more dramatic fashion. The impact of that and on the surrounding countries, and I think that this change will have an impact, but I don't think the change will lead to a failure of the Egyptian social, political fabric, so that its influence and its role in the Arab world and in the Middle East would be lost. I think Egypt is still a leader. Egypt was the first Arab country in many ways. It nationalized the Suez Canal. It was the first country that sought peace with Israel, established diplomatic relations. And in many ways, it has been a leader. I do not think that that will change as a result of this. And its influence in the wider Arab world will still be felt.
Since we touched upon the Turkey issue, what would you see happening hereafter in the country?
Interesting. Yeah. If things go the way people now expect in Egypt, I would think that the current government in Turkey will have to grant greater concessions to people, because people will take courage from what's happened in Egypt, and I would guess they would want more and more. And the longer you delay that, the more you'll have to give to people. So possibly the Turkish government will have to prepare itself to grant more concessions to demonstrators and people.
But is Erdogan really ready to go down that road? He doesn't seem to be.
I think so. I think he is. I think Erdogan is pragmatic. You saw he cut off relations with Israel, and then he mended relations with Israel. It was very friendly with Iran. Now it's not so friendly with Iran. I think Erdogan is pragmatic, and should he see, I think, the survival of his party in government depending on arriving at a compromise with the people, I think he will go down that route, yes.
He will?
I think he will, of course.
This is a web interview. We're going to, where everyone's watching this through the internet, and I couldn't not touch upon the subject of the social media phenomenon. We're talking about Egypt and Turkey, and we have two opposing sides, let's say. Morsi has just updated his Facebook status concerning the new revolution, the reignition of the revolutions there, and then we have Erdogan saying that this is anything but angelic, the internet, and is not going to use it. How is the internet and social media, what is the role of social media and internet in these changes happening now all around the world, not just in the area? Extremely,
extremely powerful tools. We have learned now that President Obama in the United States used the internet very efficiently and effectively for his own election first time when he went to the White House. Now, because the flow of information is no longer the monopoly of governments, and people can find their own ways of accessing information and passing it on, and therefore by flow of information you can organize events and you can assemble yourselves into a political force. That makes the social media, these networks, extremely important and extremely potent forces that governments are at pains to deal with governments in the region. Of course, you can try to slow down the speed of internet or other such measures, but they have shown to be very resourceful, particularly the youth, and finding always ways of skirting these issues and finding their own way of working and utilizing these important social media tools. Extremely important.
But on a government level, well, in general, they say if you can't beat them, join them. And we see Morsi doing exactly that, and Erdogan not getting the message. Should governments, such as the Obama example has shown, try to get into the game?
Yes. The reason Morsi is into it because Muslim Brotherhood, which is the oldest organized Islamic movement in the area, I think founded in late 1920s, 1928, they want to utilize internet effectively. They are extremely organized. If you remember when after 18 days of protest in Tahrir Square 2 years ago, Mubarak resigned, those 18 days, the 200,000 people who were there, who fed them? How did they use the basic facilities that they needed? Clothing. It was an extremely organized gathering that Muslim Brotherhood had put together. So they're very, very organized. I'm not sure that, that in Turkey they have the organization behind Erdogan has that kind of extensive network and experience that Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt has. So the advantages of Muslim Brotherhood in using the social media perhaps has to do more with their longer experience and greater network.
Thank you so much, Professor. That is it from us. Thank you, Professor Mirbagheri, Professor of Middle Eastern Studies at the University of Nicosia here in Cyprus. Thank you so much. It's a quite extensive subject. We couldn't touch upon everything today, but I hold you to a new one with new developments.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much.